The words of Ecclesiastes: a season is set for everything. Time for every experience under heaven. Time for dancing. Time for wailing. Time for birthing. And a time for dying. Time for speaking and a time for silence. Time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated one, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitations of psalms and prayers, thus linking Lyle's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai Roi Lo Echsar Bino Deshi Arbitzeni Amei Menuchotian Haleni Nafshi Yoshevev Yancheni Leman Tzedek Leman Shemo Gam Ki Elach Bagetz Hamavid Lo Ira Ki Ata Imadi Shiftecham Shentachai Emai Nachamuni Ta'aroch Lefenai Shochan Neged Sorai Deshanta V'Shemen Rashi Kosi Ravaya Ach Tov V'Chesed Yerdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai V'Shafti V'Veit Adonai L'Orach Yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kirechem avabanim richam Adonai ayiraav. Ki hu yadai yatzreinu zachor ki afar anachnu. Enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitz hasadeh ken yatzitz. Ki ruach v'avrabo v'anenu v'lo yikraenu od makamo. V'chesed Adonai ma'olam v'adolam. Al yiraav. V'tzid kato livnei vanim. As the Father has compassion for his children, Adonai has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them and they are no more. No one can recognize where they grew. But Adonai's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all of the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. It is always hard to say goodbye to a loved one or to a friend. But it becomes even more difficult when the person who has been with us and has left this world physically was as special, as kind, and as caring as Lyle. I had the true bracha, the true blessing and zchut, the true merit of knowing Lyle since almost when I first moved to Vancouver nearly 20 years ago. And in this past 20 years, I've had a chance to see him in times of great joy and challenge. But I will always remember Lyle in one simple way, as an outstanding mensch. Well, we wish that we were never here at this very moment, at this particular moment ever. I do have to say that I could not find a more appropriate Torah portion than that of this week's Parsha to open our discussion about Lyle, his life, and all that he meant for his family, his friends, his community, and even those people who benefited from him in such a significant way, but never even knew his name. This week we read Parshat Ve'era. This is a Torah portion in which Abraham waits at the entrance of his tent in order to run out and greet any visitors who may happen to pass by. Abraham demonstrates a love for caring for others by feeding them and looking after their needs. Abraham argues for the welfare of the people, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, or no matter what they may do. All of this, of course, describes Lyle to a T. He was a man who made sure that no one was left behind, had a sense of justice that always prevailed, and looked out for anyone who was struggling in this world. Lyle had a strong Jewish identity, the manifestation of which was his activity within our community. He was involved. He helped others through his volunteer work at the Hebrew Free Loan Association. The Jewish Seniors Alliance was very important to him. He took his position as membership manager so seriously that he even recruited his children for the organization long before they would technically qualify for membership. Lyle's passion for helping others was, of course, not limited to the Jewish community. He was a passionate person about being compassionate. He would drive down to the beach and bring blankets and meals to people who were sleeping in their cars. He literally kept stuff in the back of his car so that he could give them away. Lyle also gave to an unlimited number of charities. Despite Lyle's passion for helping others, he was so unassuming in all of it. His family knew about it, but because he was so humble in his giving, most others did not. Lyle's love of giving carried over when he moved to Terraces. He wanted to tip the servers, even though it was prohibited. He wanted to make sure that he helped them in any way possible, even if it meant tipping them with chocolates. And there was a time that Lyle made ice cream for a server at a restaurant because the server said how much they liked licorice ice cream. Lyle was very knowledgeable. He knew something about everything, had an answer to every question. He was curious. And he would often research what he wanted to learn about in order to be able to tell a great story. Lyle was someone that people loved because he loved them. Lyle connected. Didn't matter if you were the maintenance person or the person who owned the building. He was always a true gentleman. He was generous with the people with whom he worked, who worked for him. In a moment, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from Lyle's family. But before we do that, I'd like to say the names of some of Lyle's family who are certainly miss him dearly. Lyle was preceded by his wife, Roslyn, Zichrono Livracha, and brother Jerry, Zichrono Livracha. He remembered dearly by his partner, Rita, and his children, Brent, who's married to Lisa, and Michelle, who's married to Reno, and his grandchildren, Jessica, who's married to Jared, Sari, who's married to Benny, Zachary, Olivia, who's married to Kyle, Eden, whose partner is Mitch, and his great-granddaughters, Charlie and Sophia, his sister Bonnie, and his sister-in-law Yvette, who of course was married to the late Hershey. Joy, who's married to Jerry. Grace, who's married to Martin, and his many nieces and nephews. Zichrono livracha. May Lyle's memory be for a blessing. I'd like to ask Brent and Michelle to step forward at this moment in order to share some important words.
Thank you all for being here. I'd like to start with a poem. You may have heard it before, but I think it's worth repeating. It's called the Dash Poem. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of the birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what matters most of all was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time they spent on earth, and now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. Our father's dash was 89 years. He filled up that dash, packing in as much life as he possibly could, and spent very little time wasting it. He truly loved life, and he eked out every day possible. Unfortunately, this last chapter has been a tough one. We'd like to give special thanks to his caregivers, Marilyn and Jackie, for the loving care they gave our dad this year. You made him feel safe and happy and loved, and we're truly grateful.
Lyle Sidney Pullan, Dad, Zeta, Phil, which Lisa affectionately called him, an acronym for father-in-law, was endlessly curious and had a broad knowledge about a vast array of subjects. He was always up to date on current events and retained information better than anyone we know. Interestingly, with all that knowledge, he spent very little time fretting over the state of the world, even in the tough times, focusing on facts and complexities, not sound bites. He understood the tides of history and saw things through a long lens. He was an unassuming gentleman, but with a devilish side. He loved a party, a good drink, dancing, a great joke, and, of course, planning his next trip. He traveled to over 60 countries and remembered all those trips in great detail. He and our mother, Rosaline, were trailblazers, going to China, India, Japan, and many others before tourism to these countries was popular. He had a special way of connecting with people with curiosity and no judgment. He was a great storyteller and loved telling stories about his adventures and the places he'd seen.
Our father spent the first few years of his life in Vancouver until his parents, Nat and Sarah, moved the family to Nanaimo in the late 1930s to operate a dry cleaning plant. Along with older brother Jerry and younger sister Bonnie, early life was adventurous and fun. We imagined a Huck Finn-type character as he regaled us with stories of canoeing and fishing by himself at age 7. He was a young entrepreneur, catching fish and selling them to the local fish merchants, going out in his small wooden rowboat to collect logs that had broken away from their log booms and returning them to the sawmill for a reward, and running errands for a nickel or a dime for the many soldiers stationed in Nanaimo during World War II. He loved to tell us how he bought his first car, starting driving at 12 or 13, and when he turned 16 and finally went to the police station to get his license, They greeted him by saying, "It's about bloody time, Lyle."
When he was in his early 20s, our dad went on a double date with a couple of nice Jewish girls from Vancouver who had taken the ferry to Nanaimo just for the date. Dad was instantly smitten when he saw Rosaline, his friend's date. And a quick courtship led to a wedding in June of 1958. Our mother moved from her family home in Vancouver to start a new adventure in small town Nanaimo. They both quickly got involved in the Kinsmen Service Club and were always proud of the work they did there and the lifelong friends they made there.
Michelle and I were both born in Nanaimo, but our parents wanted us to grow up in a more Jewish environment, so we moved to Vancouver in 1964. Our dad answered a help wanted ad to be the manager of a dry cleaning store in Burnaby, and that fortuitous meeting of Lyle Pullan and Emil Wiener began a 60-year, multi-generation partnership that carries on to this day with Emil's son Brian and myself. Manager Lyle quickly turned into partner Lyle, and they started to buy and build additional dry cleaning locations and created the Busy Bee dry cleaning franchise system. My dad was proud of the fact that he brought the original carpet cleaning rental machines to BC. That business concept spawned a carpet cleaning and janitorial supply company that he ran for 25 years. My dad and Brian also acquired the Coit cleaning franchise over 40 years ago. Lyle was committed to the industry, serving in many roles, including as president of both the BC Fabricare Association and the International Dry Cleaners Congress. Throughout all those businesses and roles, he was always known for his unquestioned honesty and integrity, and he often helped many other fellow business people as they grew their businesses, even when they became his competition.
Throughout his business life, our mom was always by his side every step of the way. Our parents had a marriage that was vibrant and loving, and it lasted 52 years until our mom passed away in 2010. They provided us with such a strong and loving foundation and an extended family of aunties and uncles and great aunts and grandparents and cousins that was second to none. We enjoyed boating in the summer and skiing in the winter and traveling during the holidays. They continued to share all of this with each of their 5 grandchildren, Zach, Jessica, Olivia, Sari, and Eden. We went on several family cruises, and Grandma and Zeta took each of them on trips of their choice for their bar and bat mitzvahs and opened their eyes to travel unto the world.
There are not many people who are lucky enough to have the opportunity at a second chapter that opens their heart again. But Lyle was one of the fortunate ones. Through a mutual friend, he met Rita Eder about a dozen years ago. Rita is incredible. An academic, an author, a lovely and interesting woman. They shared a beautiful chapter together and traveled and enjoyed life. Ever the interested learner, our dad became the de facto mayor of Mexico City, where Rita lives. And he would quote statistics and GDP figures. He would also tell us about all the interesting architecture, food, and people. He accompanied Rita in New York City about 8 years ago while she was at Columbia, researching and writing a book, and he was proud of his role being her research assistant. He was her best publicist, and their love and friendship was a beautiful thing. Although this last year has been particularly difficult, Rita has been by his side through all of it. Our dad was fairly well versed in medical setbacks. He had a quadruple bypass in 1995, and after that became very focused on maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We've often joked that he outlived all 9 lives and then some. And each time he bounced back, defying the odds and shocking the doctors. As one of the first COVID patients back in March of 2020, he spent 2 weeks in the ICU. And on day 12, when the nurse said to us, "Your dad is doing exercises in his bed," we knew he'd be okay. This man had a strong will to live, and it's good he did, because since then, he witnessed 3 of his grandchildren get married and welcomed 2 great-grandchildren, Charlie and Sophia, into the family. Nothing made him happier.
He liked to be busy and keep active. The guy did not have time for Netflix, and he would want you to know that. He was involved in the Capilano Club for 50 plus years. He was active in the Hebrew Free Loan Society and Jewish Seniors Alliance, just to name a few. He loved to manage his stocks, keeping meticulous notes on lined paper. He loved to garden. He played golf. After our mother died, he bought an air fryer and learned to cook. He also made the best strawberry ice cream. He was a lover of nature and took pleasure in the small things. He loved watching spiders building their webs and made friends with the raccoons who roamed the property. He brought food, clothing, and blankets to homeless people he saw in the neighborhood. He was technology embracing. He loved his smartwatch, Alexa, Instagram, and Facebook. Even though he struggled with his health this last year, he still monitored his steps, and until a few weeks ago, would do laps in the lobby to hit his daily goal.
His memory was so strong that my aunts relied on him to write their family history. He was the one who had carefully listened and retained my grandfather's stories. He also wrote his own book several years ago with prompting from his grandchildren. He was proud of the book, and we will all cherish it and all the stories and wisdom contained within. The dash between July 25th, 1936 and November 3rd, 2025 was packed to the brim. It was filled with adventure and love and experiences and grit and humor and some really bad puns. It was by every measure a life well lived. That it came to an end will leave a big hole in our family and to all those who loved him. But we know how lucky we are to have had such a strong guiding star who led us by example. If we can each take a lesson from Lyle on how to fill the dash of our own lives, it will be a blessing.
I'd like to ask Zachary and Jessica to step forward now, please.
As Zeta's eldest grandchildren, and of course me as his favorite grandson, Jess and I wanted to share a few words on behalf of the 5 of us. Olivia couldn't be here today because she's busy taking care of Zeta's newly born second great-granddaughter, something I know would have made him smile. Zeta played such a big role in our lives growing up. He wasn't just part of our childhood, he helped shape it. As kids, we were always at his house, going for swims, having sleepovers. He knew I loved computers and was always excited to bring me down to the basement to play computer games. Unfortunately, he only had solitaire. But I loved it, and I'm sure it gave him and Grandma some much-needed quiet time. Because I wasn't always the most obedient grandchild. I can still hear Zeta shouting at me to listen to Grandma, followed by her shouting back, "Don't anger your Zeta, he has a bad heart." Some of my strongest childhood memories are the trips we'd take around BC on his boat. I loved being on the water with Captain Zeta. I'd follow him everywhere, curious about everything, especially watching him down in the engine room fixing things. As a kid, I believed he could fix anything. And as an adult, I only had that confirmed. It amazed me when I'd visit him in his 80s and find him replacing wood planks on his deck or building planters for his vegetable garden. But of course, my favorite part of boating with Zeta was when he'd let me be captain. One time, on a beautiful sunny day, we were up on the top deck. I was at the wheel, and Zeta was doing something behind me, probably busy fixing something. Suddenly, we heard a loud bang. We both looked back to see a big splintered log bobbing up and down in our wake. I looked over at Zeta in horror, ready to be thrown overboard. But he just smiled and said, "You made a lot of toothpicks." He also took us on many trips around the world, and that had an enormous influence on all of us. Zeta and Grandma's love of travel and the countless trips they took us on sparked the same sense of excitement in us and shaped so much of our lives. They took me to Japan as a gift for my bar mitzvah. It completely captivated me and ultimately led to me moving there for university, which then led to years in Barcelona and marked the beginning of a very international lifestyle. But some of my favorite memories with Zeta aren't from exploring Japan in the matching red outfits of Grandma made us wear so we wouldn't get lost, or catching shiners off the dock in Gambier Island, or from cruising around Mexico. They were the days we'd sit on his balcony, looking out over the harbor and chatting over a bowl of whatever ice cream flavor he'd made that week.
He always had something fascinating to share about what was going on around us. He was endlessly curious and never stopped learning, noticing details that most of us would miss. If a flock of birds passed by, he could tell you exactly which tree they were nesting in. He knew the origins of every ship in the harbor and what it was carrying. After a lifetime of exploring every inch of the BC coastline, he knew it all. And our conversations inevitably circled back to us agreeing that BC was the best place in the world, always resulting in the question, when are you grandchildren moving back? Luckily, he got one of us. It wasn't just BC and boats. Zeta knew about everything. He was our go-to for any obscure question, from world history to family history. He'd be able to tell you why we clinked glasses when we cheered, or why it's called room and board. His memory was incredible. Unfortunately, if you've spent time with any of us grandchildren, you'll know that's not one of the traits that he passed down to any of us. So with our not-so-great memory, we had the privilege of having Zeta teach us the same thing many times over. But he was always happy to patiently explain again and again how you can tell whether the tide is going in or out by looking at the anchored ships, because the ship's bow points into the tide, not away from it, I think. Zeta was so deeply involved in our lives. He was there for every event, every celebration, always asking how work was going, how life is treating us, what Charlie's latest trick was, and most importantly, when we're coming to visit next. He gave us so much: his stories, his wisdom, his love, and his time. Zeta lived a very long and full life, but it will never feel long enough. All of us know how lucky we are to have him in our lives, and we will make our best efforts to live like Zeta, with curiosity, humor, and interest and strength.
Shiva Minyanim. Will be tonight and tomorrow at 7 p.m. at 1996 West 14th. Again, 1996 West 14th, tonight and tomorrow, 7 p.m. Please note that the meal of condolence is just for the family. Tzedakah, charity, in Lyle's memory, may be donated as suggested by the family to Beth Israel, the Jewish Senior Alliance, or the Pullan Family Fund at the Jewish Foundation. Please rise. Amalei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamsei Menuchana, Nechona Tache Kanfei Ashchina, Bimalot Kedushim, Uterim Gzora Mazhirim, Et Nishmat, Dov Ben Natan Vesara, Shalach Leolamo Began Eden Tiamenuchato, Anna Barachamim Astirabes Eter Kanfecha Leolamim, Utzor Bitzorim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nechalato, Vianuch B'Shalom Meshkavo V'Nomar, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Lyle, who's gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Going to ask that the pallbearers step forward at this moment, to be followed by the family. And then to be followed by the rest of us. If anyone would like to use the golf cart, it is available and is immediately outside these doors. If I can ask you actually to step forward immediately after the family, that would be very helpful.
Is it inside or outside?